Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Inside the Birds TV with Adam Caplan and Geoff Mosher, presented, of course, by DraftKings Sportsbook. And we are really fortunate today to have one of the best, if not the best, in the industry, a guy who's been covering the NFL for quite a while. He needs almost no introduction. He works for NBC Sports. He writes the world famous, I'd like to say, world famous Football in America column. He is Peter King. Pete, thanks so much for coming on with us for the first time. Glad to have you.
Hey, I'm really glad to be on with you guys. Thanks. Hi.
Sure. Look, I mean, the Eagles have had quite a last, 18, 19 months. We'll start off kind of asking for your impression on this franchise. The fans have been through a little bit of a roller coaster, through a bad season, a head coaching change, a quarterback trade, a lot of drama, and now they're kind of being asked to see the promise of tomorrow. What is your just overall take on what's happened to the franchise here over the past 18 to 20 months?
I mean, I'm shocked. I still am shocked. I sometimes when I start thinking about what exactly has happened and where the Eagles were, at the end of 2019, at the end of that season, and where they are today, it really is shocking. I mean, it's almost like it almost the way COVID has impacted the country, in a social and in health and everything like that. The sort of the bomb that hit the United States. I mean, look, obviously we're talking about a game, but to me, it's the same effect in sports as what has happened to the Eagles, because I don't know anybody who would have said to you 18 months ago that, the franchise for the long term is going to go ahead without Doug Peterson, without Carson Wentz, and that they're basically going to build from scratch. And, that that great combination you had at Alabama in 2018, Jalen Hurts to Devontae Smith, is going to kind of be your hope for the future in some ways. It's all too bizarre. It just really is.
Peter, from covering not only the Eagles, but all 32 teams, and you've seen, because we know you've talked to the Eagles many times over the years privately. You've covered Jeffrey Lurie. I'm sure you've dealt with Jeffrey. How do you think he's handled this implosion? Because you just talked about it, one we never saw coming. How do you think he's handled this disappointment of how the team has gone from the highest of the highs at 17 to lowest of lows at 4-11-1 last season?
I saw Jeffrey about a month ago. I was invited to the premiere of his movie, The Summer of Soul, in Philly. And it was really, really a cool event. I had never met Nick Sirianni before, and I met him that night. Jeffrey seemed extremely excited about not only about the movie, but about where the Eagles are headed. And I think it's because you guys know very well that Jeffrey is, in his other life wants to be Mel Kiper. And so, he studies a lot of that stuff. And for him to think that they could have 3 number 1 picks next year, and they could be in the power position of the draft, and they also could be in power position to get either Deshaun Watson, probably not Aaron Rodgers, because I think if the Packers move him, they will almost adamantly try to move him to the AFC. But I think the Eagles right now would be the leader in the clubhouse for Deshaun Watson because they got the most ammunition. But having said all that, I think that Jeffrey Lurie looks at this as it was clear at the end that he and Doug Peterson were not on the same page. And so I think rather than try to sort of put Humpty Dumpty back together again, they said, let's just start again with a lot of draft chips, with a new coach who's more in tune to the way we want to run things. And look, they might be under 500 for the next 5 years. And if they are, then this experiment is going to look like a failure. But I think when Jeffrey Lurie gets to the point where he's got to make a change rather than agonize over it, he feels like, let's just make a change.
You know, to piggyback off what you said, Peter, and Adam and I discussed this, and certainly it's a big part of the discussion among the media here in Philadelphia. The Eagles do have a good track record of kind of rebounding from really bad seasons and getting it right. But they also have a track record of kind of going through some really strange, whether it's, you know, Chip and Howie or whatever just happened with Carson. Every few years, they also have a track record of having to hit that reset button that you talked about. And I wonder if you've kind of developed a sense here on whether you think that's kind of going to always be the Eagles, the peaks, valleys, or do you think that they might be losing their way from what had been a pretty successful run for a while there under Andy, and then obviously Doug came in and won the Super Bowl?
You know, I think that it's hard to generalize about anything because we're dealing with human beings, and we're dealing with, like, I never, ever thought that Carson Wentz was going to get turned sideways by the drafting of Jalen Hurts. I mean, there was no indication in the first place that Jalen Hurts was brought in to be anything other than a high-quality backup. Look, I'm one of the few people, I think, in our business who not only had zero problems with them taking Jalen Hurts when they took him, but I like the pick. The reason I like the pick is that a long time ago, I developed this opinion based on history. It was based first off with the San Francisco 49ers, watching them. And Bill Walsh, once having a conversation with Bill Walsh, and in essence, him saying that the backup quarterback is one of the 10 most important players on your team. And, you know, he proved that by bringing in Steve Young when Joe Montana was still very capable of playing very good football. And he just thought at the time, one of the reasons why he wanted to bring in Young, he wanted a more mobile quarterback. And I think he also knew that he didn't want his season to be over if he got a quarterback injury. And he felt like if Joe Montana gets hurt, our season's over. Now, I also think that part of that was the fact that he had kind of fallen out of love a little bit with Joe Montana, as crazy as that sounds. And I think he just had this sort of, he jonesed for a quarterback like Steve Young. And the fact that they could get him so cheap, you know, why not? And I kind of look at the acquisition of Jalen Hurts the same way. You know, 2 of the previous 4 years, 2 of the previous 3 years, actually, Carson Wentz had gone down with an injury for the season. And twice they were lucky that they had Nick Foles there. Well, Nick Foles priced himself out of backup quarterback land. And now they were looking at, you know, do you really want Nate Sudfeld or whoever, or Josh McCown? Do you want to put all of your eggs in in that basket when clearly you're not sure about the long-term health and durability of Carson Wentz? And I think I just look, and I've not talked to Wentz. I hope I get a chance to this summer in Indianapolis. But it just seems to me from the things that I heard that Carson Wentz just never could accept, the fact that he was now, in his mind, being pushed for this job. And I don't think he was being pushed for this job. I think as long as he stayed healthy and played with a modicum of success, he was going to be the quarterback of the team. And I always go back to, I look back at some of the really good quarterbacks that I've covered over the years when they were challenged, and you look and see how they've reacted. Aaron Rodgers has reacted like Carson Wentz did, regardless of what he says about Jordan Love. That pissed Aaron Rodgers off, period. But but other quarterbacks, look at Tom Brady in 2014 when they drafted Jimmy Garoppolo. It was clear that Jimmy Garoppolo, in the eyes of Bill Belichick, there was a good chance he was going to be the successor to Brady. Brady's getting old and all that. I think they drafted him and Brady was 38 that year. But Brady just said, well, I'll show you. And he won 1 MVP, 2 Super Bowls, and then then Garoppolo was traded. And so I think that you've got to control the things that you can control. And Carson Wentz got hurt twice, and he can't control the fact that the team didn't want the season to be over if he got hurt again. And in my opinion, and again, look, I don't know this, but it just seems like he just handled it all wrong, and that led to his downfall.
Peter, let's stay on the Watson situation. Geoff and I had noted on a show a couple months ago, actually more than a couple of months ago, it was in the middle of March, that we had heard, even before the Watson allegations came to the surface, that the Eagles were monitoring the situation. They're really interested in the player. And from what we understand recently, they still are. But here's my question with Watson. In respect to playing this season, do we know, what do you know? Do you think he'll play this season? Do you think he'll get cleared to? And your reading on the situation for several weeks and months, is he a guy that teams think, whoever, we know it's not just the Eagles, we believe there might be other teams involved. Is he a guy that you feel like you could put on the field this season and be proud of being the face of the franchise?
No, I think if you trade for Deshaun Watson, it's for 2022. I don't view, because look, he's going to get suspended for how long? 8 weeks, 6? I don't know. And then there's going to be, to me, a Mike Vick-like reaction in Philadelphia or wherever he gets traded. I mean, when Mike Vick, got traded, people protested, in Philadelphia and did not want the franchise to have anything to do with Michael Vick. And I think there probably will be some of that here too. But look, he's not getting traded. I thought Adam Schefter said it right. I mean, he is not going to get traded at a discount by the Houston Texans. The Texans are an expansion team. And, they are not playing for anything this year other than to try to get their franchise on solid footing post Deshaun Watson. They know that Deshaun Watson has played his last snap in Houston. They know that it's over. But this year is about cleaning up the Deshaun Watson mess. Whether that means he gets traded before the trading deadline, or whether that means that they just simply take their medicine with him this year and then prepare to trade him in March of 22. I think it's highly likely, at least in my mind, that Deshaun Watson might play a little bit this year, but really, if you're the Eagles and Deshaun Watson comes in the lineup when you're 2-8, who cares? They're not going anywhere this year. And I'm not saying the Eagles won't necessarily be 2-8. Maybe they'll be close to 500. I don't know. But this is a long haul deal for whoever makes the trade.
And what of Aaron Rodgers do you see happening?
I am clueless Joe Jackson on this. I just am. I can guess just the same way that you guys can. But, it's very clear he does not want to play in Green Bay. I wrote in either my last or second to last column that, I think the only solution to this is if Brian Gutekunst and Mark Murphy say, which I would bet they've already said, that's just my guess, but that Brian Gutekunst, Mark Murphy say to David Dunn or David Dunn and Aaron Rodgers, listen, you've got a choice. We are either going to sit on you this year. You're either going to come in and play, or we're going to sit on you. We're not trading you this year. If you choose to not play for us this year, then obviously you forced our hands and we'll have to do it next year. But why don't we make this deal? Why don't we make an agreement right now that we will trade you next March to one of 4 AFC teams that you designate, assuming that we can get, something close to market value. The only way it makes sense for them to trade, for the Packers to trade him now, is if the Packers can get value for this year. Like, I'll give you an idea that I think has some merit, and that is, why don't you trade him to Denver for 3 1s and Jerry Jeudy? And if you did that, you'd give the Packers some reason to make the deal this year. You'd have potentially Devontae Adams on one side, Jerry Jeudy on the other side. And I'm not saying it's as good as it gets, but it's damn good. And that gives you a chance this year with Jordan Love to have a pretty good season with 2 high-quality receivers, in the game, knowing also that Jeudy is important because Devontae Adams might not return it after free agency. So you may be in the market for a franchise receiver. I have no idea if Denver would do that, but my whole point is Denver would have to make a trade that would make it worthwhile for the Packers this year. Otherwise, why would the Packers do it?
The Russell Wilson situation I find fascinating. I've covered this thing now. It seems like a year. I on my reporting on it, just that Russell seems to have a different opinion with when it comes to Pete Carroll about what the offense should look like. We know he's wanted input and all that. Right now, things are good. But where do you see the future of Russell Wilson past this season?
Again, a lot of this stuff you have to read tea leaves on because the organization has been so tight-lipped, as has Russell Wilson since the infamous Dan Patrick interview. But this just feels to me like Russell Wilson has heard Pete Carroll talk for 8 or 9 years now. And he just, it's old, it's stale. I just think that he believes Pete Carroll, he likes Pete, but, Pete has gotten stale, at least in the eyes of Russell Wilson. Now that's my view from 3,000 miles away. And I don't know if that's the case, but that's just the feeling I get, because Russell Wilson, for him to be so dismissive of the way that the Seahawks coach and plan on offense, I mean, it's a lack of respect, honestly, for the people who are coaching them. So I'm just trying to read the tea leaves on it. How long is it going to last? I don't know, but it sounds like Russell Wilson is going to be yay team for this year, and then we'll see what happens. My guess is that he or his agent, Mark Rodgers, will push after this season to get out, but we'll see what happens. There's a lot of time between now and next February.
All right, Pete, I think we have time for one more real quick one. There has not been a repeat champion in the NFC East since 03-04 Eagles. That's 17 years we're going on.
That's the craziest thing.
Isn't it? Now, yeah. Washington's got a really strong defense. They brought in Fitzpatrick. They bring in Curtis Samuel. They're trying. How do you see this NFC East shaping up? Really quick. I mean, obviously the Giants made some upgrades, and Dallas comes back with Dak too.
Over the last 4 years, last 4 seasons, the Giants are tied for the worst record in football. They've got 18 wins. And, at some point, it's got to be fish or cut bait with Dave Gettleman and the Giants. If they don't play well this year, I think John Mara is going to deal with the ire of the fans by feeding them, Dave Gettleman, and they'll move on and try to go buy the best GM he can buy. So this is a really important year. Everybody talks about Daniel Jones, but I kind of look at Jones and I think that in a third year you ought to be pretty good, but not at your peak yet. And I think he's got enough receiving help that he's going to have to play well to really well this year for the Giants to have a chance to win that division. Plus, I think losing Tomlinson at defensive tackle is a big loss. That's probably the biggest loss, one of the biggest losses of any team in free agency this year. The Vikings got very fortunate to be able to get him. The one other thing I would say just about the division, like, I kind of think it's going to come down to Dallas and Washington. I really like Washington. It's probably premature to really like them. When I say I really like them, I don't know. Does that mean they'll win 9 games and go 9-8? I don't know. But the one thing about Washington is that they're going to play really solid defense. They played a really good defensive game against the Bucs in the playoffs. If anything, they're going to be a little bit better on defense, in my opinion. I think if I had to pick one, I would pick Washington to win the division. But again, Dallas is going to score a lot of points. I don't think they're going to be very good on defense. So, if Dallas can win 10 games while allowing, I think they're going to be the 3rd or 4th most generous team on defense. If they can win some high-scoring games, I think they've got a really good chance. But I think it comes down to Washington and Dallas, and I don't know, backed against the wall, I'd probably take Washington.
Will we see you, just real quick, on your training camp tour, any highlights you could give our listeners and viewers about where you're going to be on tour for NBC?
My first stop is going to be on the first day of training camp at 6:30 in the morning in Las Vegas.
Nice.
And they practice so early, even though I think they're going to be practicing inside because obviously it's going to be 112 degrees that day. But it's just like the Cardinals for years have been practicing inside their stadium because they have a grass field. And, so I'll be at Vegas early. I'll tell you, I've got a 3-day hole in my schedule, and it centers around Green Bay because I'm either going to go to the first Green Bay preseason game, or because logically you would think that's going to be a Jordan Love game. And, but the reason that there's a hole there is if Aaron Rodgers shows up all of a sudden. Isn't that fascinating? Yeah. It's almost as fascinating if he shows up as if he doesn't. But I have a feeling that there's going to be some very tight lips in Green Bay, and the power of observation in training camp this year is going to have to be great, because I don't think anybody's going to be saying anything other than, "Isn't it a lovely day out here at Lambeau?"
No doubt. Well, we look forward to your training camp tour. One of the most exciting things every year in sports media. I'm sure you'll have a lot. Peter King, NBC Sports. We thank you so much. Author of The Great Football Morning in America on NBC sports.com. And hopefully we can get you back on down the road sometime, Pete.
Sounds good. Anytime, guys. Really enjoyed it.
All right. Thank you. Thanks to Pete. Thanks to our friends at Deal Dash. Download the Deal Dash app. Use promo code ITB and get yourself some bonus free bids. And, of course, see our friends at Sky Motor Cars and SkyMotorCars.com. All right, for Peter King and Adam Caplan, I'm Geoff Mosher. Thanks for watching another episode of Inside the Birds TV.